Welcome to the Gathering of Tribes, weekly discussion of the Come Follow Me lessons. I'm Chuck Kay, and today we're going to excuse Rachel Krause. She's a little bit under the weather. So we're happy to have you join us as we discuss the Doctrine and Covenants with faithful members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We've invited a couple of wonderful brethren to join the discussion today, Brother Zander Sturgill and Brother Casey Griffiths. And you may recognize them. They're regularly on various media platforms. And so we welcome you guys to our podcast today. So I'll give a quick bio here. We'll start with Zander. Zander Sturgill has spent the last decade working with nonprofits focused on supporting the restored gospel. He spent nearly 10 years at Scripture Central as one of the lead video producers, creating content with researchers and professors. His work has taken him around the world alongside experts, learning about the restored gospel. He now works at the Ancient America Foundation, which is dedicated to sharing the Book of Mormon and research related to the restored gospel. Zander earned his bachelor's degree in digital media from Utah Valley University. He is Navajo, or if you're from Window Rock, he's Dene, and has a deep interest in learning about his roots and how they connect to Latter-day Saint history. He is currently working on a personal video project exploring the history of the ancient Americas. You'll find him on all major social media platforms under his own name. He served a mission in Denmark and now lives in Springvale, Utah, with his wife and 4 children. Welcome, Zander.
Thank you.
Do you have any other additional things to add to that? Anything that's been going on currently that you'd like to add?
Well, one of those experts that I've been able to travel around with has been Casey here, and I've been able to learn so much from him. My expertise is in pointing the camera and recording things and learning from awesome people like Casey. And so I'm excited for this lesson. I watched Casey's video on this. He has a Come Follow Me channel with Scott Woodward, and I watched what they did on this, and it's going to be fascinating.
Appreciate that. So that takes us to Casey Paul Griffiths. He is an associate professor of church history and doctrine at Brigham Young University. Before coming to BYU, he worked for 11 years as a teacher and curriculum writer in seminaries and institutes. He is an active member of the Mormon History Association, the Latter-day Saint Education Society, and the John Whitmer Historical Association. He is the co-host of the Church History Matters podcast and hosts documentaries on church history for Scripture Central. He is the author and editor of dozens of articles and several books, including Restorations, Scholars in Dialogue from the Community of Christ and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He is also active in the historical community, has served as president of the John Whitmer Historical Association. He lives with his wife, Elizabeth, and their 4 adorable children in Saratoga Springs, Utah. Welcome, Casey.
Welcome. And just to pay the favor back to Xander, Xander and I have been all over the globe making documentaries for restoration history. We do a series called Restoration Revealed, and we've been to England, we've been to Hawaii, and just about every restoration site in the United States. And we tried to go to Canada, but Xander didn't bring his ID, and so we got turned back. That's a little it caused a little border crisis on the Rainbow Bridge at Niagara Falls. So it's a pleasure to be here with you and to be with Xander, who's one of my dear friends.
Well, that's excellent. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a while when Rachel first mentioned that we were going to try to get you guys on together. I think that I've watched a lot of information from both of you and very enlightening. A lot and a lot of it is stuff that as you consider it, stuff that maybe you've never really thought about before. And that's the thing to me that's most I guess valuable is those things that we run upon that maybe we hadn't really considered um, before in our own personal study of the gospel. And when you guys get to dig down in things, and especially as you get to see things that you show us, I think that's very, very beneficial. So welcome to both of you. So this section, the lesson today is for the salvation of Zion and the Doctrine and Covenants sections 94 through 97. And then that word, I mean, just starting off with that, Zion, I think that's something that I think a lot of people have a different idea of what that is. I mean, some people it's a land, sometimes it's an ancient place, sometimes it's a people's, sometimes it's kind of almost an attitude, you know. So what's your kind of idea of this?
Well, one of these sections, section 97, probably contains the most valuable statement, maybe the most oft quoted statement about what Zion actually is. But before we get to that, we probably got to put ourselves in the mindset of the early saints, where Zion to them is the New Jerusalem. It's definitely a place in their minds. And it's a really unique place because the Lord asked them to build Zion. It's revealed in section 57 in Jackson County, Missouri, which again is right on the edge of the United States. It's only a couple miles away from Indian territory where the Native Americans are. It's this unique melting pot where you have French trappers and white settlers and black slaves, and it's kind of this unique little area where it's going to be really tough to build Zion, but it seems like the Lord wanted them to build Zion there for a couple of reasons. One being that they believed Jackson County had ancient connections to the gospel, that it was the place where Adam and Eve lived. And beyond that, it was a place where the future was going to be important, where the New Jerusalem prophesied of in the Book of Mormon was going to be built. So, one thing you need to understand when you're reading these sections is that in the minds of the early saints, Zion was a place and a definite city, and a city that they really thought they were going to build within their lifetimes.
Yeah. How about you, Xander? What do you get from that word?
Well, I think is it in DNC 97 where it says Zion is the pure in heart.
Right.
I'm a movie guy and I like to make videos, and Thor Ragnarok is one of my most favorite shows of all time, and um, there's some gospel connections in it. And when Thor's planet gets destroyed, Asgard, his friend said, Asgard is not a place, it's a people. And that's pretty much what Zion is as well. It's doesn't have to be a physical place, it's a people. And and a big part of the work today is gathering those people together. And what I saw in these sections was, it didn't necessarily say it explicitly, but the whole idea of gathering Israel and gathering around temples and building temples was a strong theme that I felt when I was reading these sections.
Yeah, and you know, to me, again, from the Native American point of view, being able to have traveled to a whole bunch of different tribes and listen to their stories and their histories, this is something that's almost universal. This idea of this perfect place, you know, and the people. The Hopis believe that about them where they live. I mean, they live in the most inhospitable place you could ever live. There's no running water. I did a little presentation for a primary the other day, and I showed them a picture of one of the villages in Hopi, and I said, "What don't you see here?" The first word was trees. There are no trees on the Hopi reservation, you know, and this is where they lived, and so it is both a place, and to them, being Hopi, it's a whole way of life and understanding, and it's a responsibility to them because they believe that they are the stewards of everything. They are responsible for not only their place, but the whole earth and even the universe, the motion of the planets and everything, that they have a responsibility to continue with their ceremonies. Otherwise, this stuff gets disrupted and the whole thing will go into chaos. And so I think this idea, for at least for me as native of Zion, is something I really understand. It makes a whole lot of sense to me. And Casey, like you said, it's interesting that when we get concepts like this, we have to climb up higher on the mountain before we really understand. We have to get a better perspective of all of this before we can really see what this is and really appreciate what it was. I mean, they're asking him to build a temple, and they're all going, I'll get to that next week," you know. And so they have all this stuff they have to do, but I mean, they're challenged with their neighbors and everything, but they still didn't, go at it like full blast. Like this was something, the house is on fire and we got to get this place built. So to me, that was very interesting. So as we go along here, and what are some of the things that strike you out of this first section out of 94? Anything that stands out?
Well, section 94 is the Lord following up on a command he gave in section 88. So first of all, there's already hints here that Zion is going to be in Jackson County, but that Jackson County isn't going to be the only place where Zion is. For instance, in verse 1, he says, I say unto you, my friends, a commandment I give unto you, that ye shall commence a work of laying out and preparing a beginning and foundation of the city of the stake of Zion, here in the land of Kirtland, beginning at my house. So the first place he commands them to build the temple is Jackson County, but in section 88 he commands them to build the temple in Kirtland as well. And then here you see a really early use of the term stake that's going to become ubiquitous throughout the church. They're borrowing from Isaiah here in that they're talking about Isaiah is talking about a tent. And a tent, is made stronger by having stakes that give it stability and structure. And so their mindset is there's going to be a central place, that's the New Jerusalem, that's Zion. But then there's going to be all these stakes that support it. And the Lord's kind of expanding their minds a little bit to say, yes, there is going to be a temple. Yeah, the headquarters is going to be in Missouri, but start thinking about other places that it can exist and how it might be different there than it is in the center place.
Any thoughts, Zander?
No thoughts about that right now.
Okay, all right. And to me, this was something that as I read this, one of the things he starts giving them instruction on the structure itself, and he has some specific dimensions for them, and then he talks about this pattern that I shall show you. And again, for my little Native American mind, I started thinking about that and how these patterns are important. I don't know if there is something cosmic in the dimensions of those buildings, because he used the same dimensions for almost every building that he describes. And so I don't know if there's some metaphysical property to that dimension, and you just never know. That's what I always think. I hear these things and I read instruction from the Lord to the prophets, and he says stuff that just sounds mundane, but is there something more important in that than we understand? That he has them build them at this dimension. So that's me. That's kind of like Native American stuff. We get instruction and we understand the pattern. We understand. We watch nature and see the patterns. We watch how other people have lived and what instruction we've been given, and we try to follow those patterns that we've been given. And that if we do that respectfully and accurately, then we receive the blessing. We follow that with as much exactness as we can. And so, anyway, the first section of this, their topic is, I can be wholly dedicated unto the Lord. And so, out of these verses here, what are we talking about being wholly dedicated to the Lord?
Well, each of these buildings is going to be dedicated to the Lord, and I'm with you. I'm not sure what the cosmic significance of the dimensions are, except some people are surprised to find out that the temple in Zion was actually planned to be 24 temples. If everything gone according to plan, there's not just one temple at the center of the city, there's 24. And in Kirtland, if everything had gone according to plan, there wouldn't have just been the Kirtland temple. there would have been three structures identical in size, like three Kirtland Temple-like structures all next to each other. So in section 88, he says that the first house, which is the house that they actually succeed in building, is going to be a house of prayer, a house of fasting, a house of learning, a house of glory, house of God. It's primarily for worship.
Hmm.
In these sections, the two other houses that he adds, if you look in verse 3, he says, this is going to be consecrated for the building of a house for the presidency, for the work of the presidency in obtaining revelations, for the work of the ministry of the presidency in all things pertaining to the church and kingdom. So this second temple, if we're going to use that word, because they're still working out what a temple is for the presidency. It's kind of a church administration building. And then if you go down further, the third house that he asks them to build, this in verse 10, he says, a building of a house unto me for the work of the printing of the translation of my scriptures and all things whatsoever I shall command you. So we're getting three priorities based on the three houses. One is to worship God and to commune with him. That's the first house. That's the Kirtland Temple. That's the one that they rightly focus their efforts on and that they actually get built. But the second is a place for prophets to do their work, a place where the presidency can receive revelations and guidance. And they don't manage to build this one, but if you go to Kirtland today, Joseph Smith's house is less than a block away, and it kind of functions in that role. That's where a lot of important meetings take place. And then the third priority is to print the scriptures and get the scriptures into everybody's hands. That's what the third house is for. And they don't manage to build the third house that they're asked to here, but they do build a facility for printing the scriptures. It's right next to the Kirtland Temple. Unfortunately, it gets burned down when they leave Kirtland. But the Lord seems to be saying, worshiping me, listening to directions and revelations from my prophets, and reading the revelations that have already been given that are in the scriptures are going to be your top three priorities. Those are the things I need you to create space for. And again, if all had gone well, three identical structures like the Kirtland Temple in Kirtland, not just one.
Yeah, that's I didn't realize there were that many other buildings that were planned. Had they at this point had we even built any chapels yet, or had we?
Not really. The Kirtland Temple really was the first building that the church gets together and builds exclusively devoted to worship. And it's a multi-purpose facility. I mean, they hold sacrament meeting there, but they also hold classes there. The School of the Elders and the Kirtland High School meet there. And then Joseph Smith uses it as his office. So he does revelations and translations there. And he also uses it to perform ordinances. So ordinances like the sacrament for sure.
Mhm.
But we also have record that there was a kind of endowment performed in the Kirtland Temple as well. So it really is sort of like I don't know, a school and a stake center and a temple sort of all combined into one structure. And then these other buildings, like if you go and you look at where church headquarters is now, there is a house for the presidency. It's the church administration building. And there's a house for the printing of the scriptures. That's the church office building. And there's a house of glory worship, learning and fasting. That's the Salt Lake Temple, which is under renovation right now. But this does kind of set down the blueprint for what the priorities of the church are going to be.
You mean you're saying that we're actually getting back to the old pattern? It's like that now with temples. We build it there, and there's a steakhouse next to it, and our buildings are multi-purpose. We got to have that basketball court in there, and so we do a lot of different functions in our buildings these days. And so, Xander, this idea about being dedicated to the Lord, and again, I was talking about these patterns. How does that pattern of building a building dedicated to the Lord sort of convert into us being wholly dedicated to the Lord?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I don't know if this directly answers your question, but I was out camping this weekend with my kids, and I think we were talking about food, and my little 7-year-old didn't necessarily understand how important it was of what we were making. But once I started just kind of laying out some of the details and the ingredients and what you needed for it, the food and the ingredients, that didn't really even matter. It was just showing him how important the steps were. and creating some importance out of what we were building. And so I don't necessarily know if like the dimensions matter to our salvation as much as the Lord is being very specific here so that we treat it special and sacred and divine.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And as all of us know, if you don't get those ingredients right, you have something that it might not be palatable at the end. So, you know what? We skipped over one thing. I think that's kind of important to note is the order of these sections is out of order. Is that right?
I think that is right. Yeah, if you're looking at it, it wasn't a thing wholly on purpose, right?
Yeah.
But Section 94 is received on August 2nd. Section 95 is received on June 1st. And so Section 95 maybe should be where we start our discussion.
Yeah.
Where they get these specific dimensions of the temple, they kind
Right.
of get a swift kick in the pants to
Yeah.
tell them to get going, basically. If you're looking at the text, section 95, verse 1, which again is received 2 months before this build these three buildings, but it's all interrelated. He says, "Verily, thus saith the Lord unto you, whom I love, and whom I love, I also chasten, that their sins may be forgiven. For with the chastisement I prepare a way for their deliverance. In all things out of temptation, having loved you, wherefore ye must needs be chastened and stand rebuked before my face." And what are they being chastened for? He said, "You've sinned a grievous sin." This is verse 3. You've not considered the great commandment in all things that I've given you concerning the building of mine house. And so the commandment to build the temple has been in place at this point for 6 months. They received Section 88 around Christmas time, right around the first of the year. It's June, and the Lord is basically saying, "Are you going to get going on this?" And Section 97 sort of has a similar tone, but for the temple in Zion as well, meaning, hey, I need you guys to get going. But the big takeaway, probably that still applies in our day, is this idea that God doesn't hate you if you're being chastened. He chastens you because he loves you. It's one of my old choir teachers used to say, like, don't think I hate you if I correct you. Like the worst thing would be if I said nothing to you, because that would mean I don't care about you at all. You're just a thing to me. I'm saying this because I love you. Or I remember this guy who trained me as a seminary teacher. He watched my lesson and then he sat down and then he pushed up his glasses and he leaned forward and he said, "What I'm about to say is going to hurt. Um, but I'm saying it because I care about you, and I think you have potential." And that's kind of what the Lord's saying here. Like I haven't given up on you. That's why I'm going to chastise and rebuke you, because I need you to do this. It's really important. You're not doing it, but I'm not doing this out of hatred. I'm doing it out of love.
Yeah, that's such a good thing. You find that helpful when you rebuke your children, Xander, when you after showing an increase of love?
That was exactly what I was thinking of is my kids are 7 to 10 mostly, and they're at that age where they are upset when I try to give them advice and they interpret it as daddy hates me, daddy doesn't love me, blah blah blah, right? Um there's we're still in the stage of trying to communicate with them. No, we want to help you. We want you to live the happiest life you can. This is advice to make you happy and successful. And so that's yeah, same idea here.
Yeah. And that's I wish Rachel was here because I could have asked her about did that work with you? Because I that's what I always tried to do is let her know, put my arm around her and say, You know why I'm getting on you about this, letting her know that it's because I love you and I want you to make sure that these mistakes don't hurt you in the future. In fact, I have this little story that back in the day I was in the stake young men's presidency and then went to visit a priest quorum and the bishop was given a lesson, and it was a pretty good sized priest quorum. And there was one kid that was being particularly noisy and not listening. And the bishop's assistant was this great big huge man, and probably 6'7", 6'6", probably 350 pounds, that kind of guy. And so the bishop is talking, and this kid's leaning back in his chair, and and talking to some of his friends. And this guy gets up and slugs him in the shoulder, almost knocks him out of his chair. I mean, that hard of a hit. And the kid jumps up and his fists are, he's got fists ready to go. And this big old guy grabs him around the shoulder and he says, "You know why I did that?" He goes, "No." He says, "Because I love you. And because what the bishop is saying to you is important, and you need to understand this, it's for your benefit." And the kid just melted. That was the most awesome thing I had seen for a teenage boy like that, that really understood that was a show of love to him, that he wanted his attention and he needed to get back on track. And although it was sort of a severe rebuke, it was done with love and care, and he realized that. So, yeah, the Lord sometimes can give us a pretty good thump on the head, and but it's always because he cares about us and wants us to get back on the right track. And so, yeah, I think this chastening thing that he talks about here, and for good reason. We realize now what this house does. It unites our families. It makes us understand the hereafter, and about the glories, and everything that we need to know about this life. So yeah, very, very important.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that as one thing that has really hit home to me as I've learned church history over the last couple of years and have been to sites with Casey and stuff is how all these little events back then were just like seeds being ready to sprout into something huge, much huger than we realize. I mean, the church is a huge force today, and um, they didn't see that in the past, but the Lord has this bigger vision of how things are going to be. And by trying to get the saints to start this temple work, um, has cascaded into what we have today with temples all over the world where we can go as saints and gather together and become united and learning about God and his ways. And so little things like that, like this section, the temples, everything, it's just has always kind of just blown my mind how much it's grown. And in Casey and Scott's Come Follow Me series, they have a consequences section. They have when they talk about each section, they talk about context, controversies, content, and consequences, right? And
Yes.
consequences section is how this little thing turned into what was the consequence of it? What did it become? And for something like this, I mean, this whole section has become what we have today, these temples all over the world.
Yeah, and the great blessing that they are to us. I mean, this whole thing doesn't work unless we have those temples, and we connect families, and we can understand the great blessings that our Heavenly Father and the Savior have for us. So, um,
And,
there was. Go
and can
ahead.
I add, there's a little bit of a sense of urgency around temples, right?
Yes.
Back then, definitely, where the Lord is saying, "I'm rebuking you. You haven't done anything. It's been 6 months." And you'd think, well, we got to set up our farms. Well, we're launching consecration. Well, we're doing all this stuff. The Lord is saying, and none of that's bad, but priorities, guys. For instance, jump down to verse 8. He says, "Verily I say unto you, I gave unto you a commandment that you should build a house, in the which house I design to endow those whom I have chosen with power from on high. For this is the promise of the Father unto you. Therefore I command you to tarry, even as mine apostles at Jerusalem." So he's saying there is a little bit of urgency here. And it's partially because what Zander said is so true. Like, they are planting the seed that's going to turn into the great worldwide work of temple worship around the globe. 300 plus temples that were going on now. And I see that same sense of urgency in the prophet right now. Like, I remember seeing a post the other day where they were talking about the Lehi temple. And somebody was complaining online, like, why are they building another temple when there's a temple in American Fork and there's a temple in Saratoga Springs? And we don't even have enough temple workers for all those temples. And I think the prophet, in this particular case, President Nelson, has a sense of urgency because he sees what we can be. And by the way, I jumped in and said, "Have you ever tried to schedule an appointment?" And
Yeah. Yeah.
We need more temples. We can find the workers somewhere, but we really do sometimes need to carry a greater sense of urgency to get things done than we sometimes do have.
Yeah, I agree that we don't see the plan, and so we don't really understand it all yet. And I mean, it's got to be like when Brigham Young stood there under the cottonwood boughs that then sticks his cane in the ground and said, "We're going to build a temple here, and the temples are going to dot the world. They're going to be everywhere." And it's like we can't even afford to dig this place up to get started here. You're saying we're going to do this all over the world? Are you crazy? But yeah, the Lord has a plan. We don't sometimes even get a idea of how solid that plan is until we start seeing the work get done, and then we kind of all jump on board to that. I think we've all been there and seen some of those things come to pass, and we go, "Oh, that's how it's going to be done. I see it now." So, yeah, I think these lessons also help us understand that and put it into a package for us to kind of give us the correct insight and sometimes the right state of mind to see, because I think there's things that we understand and things that we have to have the prophet tell us in order for us to actually be on board. And even then, there's a lot of us that don't, and we have to uh, wait. But I think that if we can believe right at the beginning and jump right in, I mean, was it Hiram Smith that as soon as he said we got to build a temple, we got to hurry, he ran down and started cutting down the plants and stuff. It's like we got to build a temple. Let's go.
Lucy Mack Smith said that they got so hyper they said, well, maybe we build a log cabin. Like we don't have a lot of resources, we don't have a lot of know-how, but we know how to build a log cabin. What if the temple's a log cabin? And Joseph Smith had to correct them and say, it's not going to be a log cabin. I have something grander in mind. That's when Section 94 comes into play, which gives the dimensions and
Yeah.
what they're going for. But I mean, Zander and I have been to Kirtland. This building like still stands out. I mean, it's still there. That's a testament to the quality of their workmanship. But to think that a frontier community, like some of the structures that they were in, like the Whitney home and the Whitney store are still there, but the Kirtland Temple was a whole other level. I mean, it's relatively small compared to the temples we build nowadays, but for the time and the resources and the number of people that they had and where Kirtland was, it was a major accomplishment that they got this built. And I'm glad it's still there, and I'm especially glad that now we own it and there's missionaries going through.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, Casey and I and some others recorded a walkthrough of the Kirtland Temple, which you could go view on Scripture Central's YouTube channel. And one thing we ended up doing is just let's go through it from beginning to end, no breaks, and go through every room and explain the history behind everything. And if you watch closely, when we get to the very top, Casey's out of breath. It could barely speak.
You were
That's
out breath too. You just
uh, I had someone else carrying the camera. I don't remember how many steps they said there was.
66 steps to the top
Six.
of,
Wow.
Yeah.
top of the
And
temple. And it was Xander's idea to do it all in one swoop.
and and
Um,
it so go check it out. It's really good. And I think we recorded it. Casey, was that the same year the church bought it?
That was about a month after the church purchased it. So I think we were the first film crew to get in there.
Yeah.
And we got away with a lot of stuff. We even got to go in the basement, which I don't know if they'd allow us today to do that a couple of years removed. But I mean, really, it's just the Lord expects big things of us, right? And sometimes they're so big that we just sort of do what's natural, which is, yeah, okay, I'll get to work on that eventually. But I mean, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, right? So this is the Lord kind of shoving him out the door and saying, "No, I'm serious. I really need this to happen. I've got this endowment. We're preparing the world for the second coming. I need you to go get them. I need you to be proactive here."
kind of off the track here a little bit, but what was, is there anything in there that as you went through that was really surprising to you? Like, wow, I never even thought they would have done this, or this is bigger, smaller, whatever than I thought it would be.
I
Xander?
think,
Yeah, go ahead.
well, I mean, the whole idea of the walls, outside stucco walls built out of glass,
Yes.
and I think Daniel Smith, who is a temple nerd, he has a YouTube channel called Messages of Christ. I think he was telling us some history about it. And is it true, Casey, that the glass would make it shine,
So
reflect, or did it just affect the color of it?
So the Kirtland Temple tells a story in that it's not like later temples like Manti or Salt Lake where they exactly measure and cut and polish the stone and slide it in. The walls of the Kirtland Temple are just like random stones. It's called rubble stone construction. And they were all kind of combined together with cement and then covered with this stucco that did have glass and porcelain. It turns out they went to garbage dumps around the local communities to find glass and porcelain, then ground it up and put it in there, and so the building did sparkle. Speaking of which, one thing that surprised me as I researched the Kirtland Temple was it was blue.
Huh.
The temple wasn't white like it is now. That stucco was actually put on by Community of Christ in the mid 20th century. The original temple, and we don't have any color photographs, but we have paintings of it, was like a slate blue with green doors and a bright red roof. And so it was a lot more colorful. The whole thing of going to the Kirtland Temple, and I don't know how many times I've been now at this point, was that it kind of did surprise me that a temple doesn't follow an exact pattern. Like this original temple was a place where you would go and take the sacrament, and then maybe have a lesson in Hebrew, or hold a family meeting, or go and receive a sacred ordinance, like the version of the endowment they did in the Kirtland Temple. That they had this broad sense. And coming away from Kirtland, I came back to BYU and thought, well, I mean, we're doing in this building essentially what they do in the Kirtland Temple. Is it okay if I call this a temple? Does it serve the same purpose? And I sort of took to teaching my classes and engaging in my studies a little bit more seriously, because to the early saints, learning was a consecrated activity. Like you go and you learn Hebrew, and that is a way to connect to God in their mind.
Yeah, another interesting thing that we did was look at the pulley system to the curtains,
Mhm.
which weren't even necessarily figured out because they had these ropes you'd pull that would lower down the curtains and partition off different areas. Um, and the guy we were with, Daniel Smith again, he was studying these ropes and trying to recreate how they would have done it, because there were powerful revelations received even within the the curtains, where when Jesus Christ appeared. That's another awesome thing about the Kirtland temples. Casey always says you could actually pinpoint one of the only spots in the world where Jesus Christ stood. Um, but anyways, I mean, again, with little seeds being planted and sprouted, like even the curtain pulley system, and we have the veil in our temples now. It's not exactly the same as Casey was saying. It wasn't revealed to be exactly the way it is today, but you do see little seeds being planted and sprouting into what we have now.
Yeah, that's awesome. We have to start, like you said, one every journey starts with a first step, and these things, we're just kind of baby steps at the beginning. We're just learning how to do things, and learning that we need veils, and learning that we need all these other things to make this process complete, and that it's it's not a it truly is a line upon line, precept upon precept learning that we have here. That each little step brings us one more bit of information and insight, and maybe even inspiration for the next thing, because we realize, oh, if this is here, then maybe we need this, and that inquisitiveness that we have then brings us back to the Lord and say, "Hey, we have this here. What shouldn't we also do this?" And the Lord says, "Yes. Now here's what you need to do."
Yeah.
And so I really like this of the beginning of the church, that there was nothing perfect about it to begin with, even though it's the Lord's church. We still had to learn each of these little processes and challenges that we don't really even consider today. We walk into a finished chapel and it's all nice, and we have sacrament cups and trays and all these things that they probably didn't have, and they had to figure out how we're going to do all of this stuff and what they do now. Um, so Kirtland was a mass of people that the seems like the gospel pulls people from all walks of life. I mean, there's probably every kind of tradesman and craftsman and even different cultures and communities that come into there. And so you have this challenge of uniting everybody there to make them a Zion people. But then you have the challenge of the outsiders there that they're trying to fit in with, and trying to um, I don't even know if they wanted to get them to accept them, because sometimes they were a little rude. We're moving in. We're going to get Zion. This is all going to be all our land. And you guys don't even know about this yet. And so what do you think that? I mean, how do you get that working for everyone? I know the Lord rebukes them every now and then about how they're doing things, but just the natural reaction, how much of an influence you think that the Lord said, "Okay, you guys are going in there. If you act like this is." I mean, he didn't even tell them. I mean, they found out for themselves that you go in there and you're going to find out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's part of the journey too, right? Is the Lord's rebuking the saints in Kirtland for not going fast enough. But if you go to section 97, he is warning the saints in Missouri that they're in danger. So I mean, there's problems in both places, and there's persecution in both places. I mean, Sidney Rigdon and Joseph Smith are beaten up badly by a mob. That's in Ohio. But in Missouri, the whole deck is stacked against them, basically. And Section 97, which, contrasting with these sections given to the church in Ohio, is given to the church in Missouri, has an even greater sense of urgency. Partially because the commandment to build this temple was given in 1831. So it hasn't been 6 months, it's been almost 3 years. And secondly, they're just in a more precarious position in Missouri in general. I mean, most of the saints are Northerners. They don't believe in slavery, and so that makes the Missourians, which Missouri's a slave state, not like them. They have these dreams about building a city, which they tended to talk in terms of it's going to be our city where we'll commune with God, and they weren't very inclusive in their language. And then another thing that has direct impact is they believe that the Native Americans are this chosen people, part of the house of Israel, that are going to join them and help them to build the city. And having a person you see as a religious fanatic who doesn't believe in slavery and who thinks the Native Americans are a chosen people is sort of a recipe for disaster in this part of the world. And then, like you said, on top of it, they were a little arrogant about the way they acted towards their neighbors. I mean, they were trying to do something extraordinary, and they were probably always going to run into opposition. But they also didn't really read the room, I guess you'd say. There's a lot of sources that indicate that the saints were telling their neighbors, you know what, you guys can either shape up or ship out, because the Lord's told us to build Zion. And if you're not going to help us, then you're going to have to be removed. I'm sorry. And that's not a great way to win friends and influence people.
Yeah. Um, and I think that human beings are always going to be human beings, and we have our faults, and we have our personal preferences or prejudices or whatever you're going to call them, and people are going to um, sort of live their lives and pattern and build their lives with those kind of background, that sort of leaning. And it's unfortunate that the early saints had to um, figure that out the hard way. That they did push and they got pushed back, and they weren't expecting that. And I worked all my life as a salesman, and one of the things that to me I learned early was the biggest challenge to salespeople is success. If you become successful, if you start doing really good, then you kind of say, I'm really good. I'm going to kick back. I'm going to go feed the ducks, and I'm going to go play around the golf, and then you kind of stop doing what got you to be successful. And I think in a spiritual way, this is what happened to so many saints. It happens to all of us. We have this spiritual experience, and we feel the spirit, very strong, and we fasted and prayed for that, and we got there. And then we think that that's all we have to do. It's sort of like, who was at Oliver Cowdery when he was, like fasting and praying and wanting to translate the Book of Mormon, and he worked and worked and worked, and then he got to do it, and then all of a sudden he lost that ability, and the Lord tells him, it's because you did not continue as you commenced. You started good, you were doing all the right things, and then you quit. And that's why you can't do this anymore, because you got to keep doing that stuff all the time. And I think for the early saints and for all of us, as we go through this journey, that's the Lord's big warning: humility.
Yeah.
You must be humble, or you can't be my people. You have to be, or I can't keep doing this for you. So there's probably 100 stories in here about that. It's almost the pride cycle of the Nephites. That's our pride cycle, I guess, too. So um, the further sections here again, and I wanted to hit this because I think it's something that's important for us, and especially newer people in the church, to know about Zion. Xander, you said it is from the scripture, it is the pure in heart, but it's almost more than that. It's can be a place. It can be a feeling. It can be a family. It can be a group of even unrelated people, as long as you have that connection together. And so, does anybody have words of wisdom about Zion and a Zion people?
Well, I mean, it's always fascinating how everything kind of comes back to temples, because even in section 97, I think it's talking about building a temple
Yeah.
there in Missouri, and um that's how you bring people together. And it is a physical location and place that we go to gather, and to unite and become pure in heart. And I don't know, in Casey's and Scott's video, they were talking about how every time the Lord commands them to build a temple, all hell breaks loose and
Yeah.
all these problems start happening. Is Satan doesn't want that to happen. And as I was watching that, even today, when the temple's announced, there's sometimes a lot of opposition. I think in Texas, there's some big opposition to a temple being built there. And it's important to understand other people's perspectives and why, and to listen and to talk it through. But the opposition still comes, and so obviously these temples are huge, important works of gathering that needs to happen,
Yeah.
even if it leads to persecution and chaos.
And it still does lead to persecution in some cases, you know. It's Brigham Young said the bells of hell never cease to ring when we start to build a temple. And this is the Lord directly warning them. Like look in section 97 in verse 7. He can't be more clear than this language. He says, "The axe is laid at the root of the trees, and every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit shall be hewn down and cast into the fire. I, the Lord, have spoken it. Verily I say unto you, all among them who know their hearts are honest and are broken, and their spirits contrite, and are willing to observe their covenants by sacrifice, yea, every sacrifice which I, the Lord, shall command, they are accepted of me." So again, it's really strong language where he's saying, you're in danger. You're in danger, and I need you to change your hearts. And it seems like part of it was this setup where they're thinking there's no way we can fail here
Yeah.
because this is our chosen place, right? So God's just gonna make it happen for us, which isn't an unhealthy attitude to have, but their faith is sort of in the place. And that's why verse 21 makes so much sense. This is where that statement Zander alluded to earlier is made. He says, "Therefore, verily, thus saith the Lord, let Zion rejoice, for this is Zion, the pure in heart. Wherefore, let Zion rejoice, while all the wicked shall mourn." It's almost like the Lord is trying to shake them out of their um, stance by saying, I'm telling you, the place matters. Yes, I told you to come here, but Zion is the pure in heart. Zion is not, like Xander said, a place. It's a people. And what kind of people? I mean, you mentioned the Hopi. I come from like a Welsh English background. Xander's Navajo. He doesn't care about the culture, right? He cares about whether or not the people are pure. And that is what makes Zion exactly what it's supposed to be. Like, I think in my mind, it is this wonderful melting pot of all these different cultures. The thing that distinguishes them is not whether they're from this group or that culture or this culture. It's whether they're pure in heart, which really exists in all cultures.
Yeah.
The Zion is the best out of every culture, those that have drawn close to God, but no sacrifice of your unique heritage if you become part of Zion. You just have to become pure in heart.
Yeah. Very good. And I think that one of the things sometimes, maybe even the saints forgot, is the fact that Heavenly Father put in this plan uh, agency that men could act for themselves. And sometimes we thought we had the high ground because the Lord directed us to do this. But that does not inhibit the agency of everybody else in the neighborhood. If they say something, then they're going to act upon their own agency. And like you said, that the bells of hell ring every time we try to put up a temple. It's because the other people have their agency, and the Lord is not going to hinder that. He's going to just say, "Hey, this has to be," and we're going to have to be wiser. We're going to have to be more understanding. I think it's a great thing that we do when we have open houses. Hey, everybody, come look, check this out. See what's in here, and invite the whole community. I mean, we just attended one with the Farmington Temple. They had us from uh, the our group gathering of tribes come up there, and it was great to see all the community leaders and stuff that were there, and the mayor and the senators and all these folks who were involved in the community to come and view what the temple is and understand what we do there, and I think that uh, we need to, as he said, be uh, wise as serpents, and in our efforts to do this and to fulfill the responsibilities of uh, building Zion here and gathering Israel. That there are other people with other thoughts, and we need to do this as I guess like brothers and sisters. We need to approach these people just like we are wanting them to enjoy the blessings that we have. And so, any other thoughts you guys have?
Well, just to correct Casey, it wasn't me who said Zion is not a place of people. It was Heimdall from Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Good movie. That's a good movie.
Yeah. No, I was thinking there's another video Casey and I made um where we went to Hawaii and we didn't make the video just to go to Hawaii. We made the video because to show in case Casey wanted to talk about the get what it means about building Zion, being pure in heart, and what how that relates to the gathering. And it was and a big theme of it was, eventually the Lord had us build temples where we lived. And instead of everyone coming to Utah, um, the Lord started having us build temples where we were at. And in Hawaii it was special because um, the Lord was having them build Zion there. And not only did they have a temple, but they had like the Polynesian Center, which built their culture and heritage. They had BYU Idaho, which was supporting education. And so you're starting to build Zion in communities outside of Utah. And so the Lord is very much aware of all of our cultural heritages. Like the Farmington Temple, I've heard has a very southwestern design to it, right? Um, which I think is cool. And a lot of temples are like that. They have they nod to the cultures that were there. Which I also think this is kind of neat. This is a bit random, but um, the Navajo tradition has four sacred mountains. Is that the same with the Hopi?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
there's a difference.
So Navajo tradition has four sacred mountains, and a lot of Native American tribes have some beliefs about future gatherings and stuff. The Farmington Temple is kind of in the middle of these four sacred mountains, kind of a neat little symbol of where you can gather in your homeland, right? Um, I think that's beautiful. I think that's awesome, and you see that in lots of temples.
As a side note, there we heard the general authorities mention the fact that this temple will do the endowment in English, Spanish, and Navajo.
Hmm.
So they will present the endowment in Navajo. So I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I hope people understand is sometimes a criticism of the church is that it's like colonialism, where we're trying to wipe out the local culture and replace it with a new culture. And really, texts like Section 97 show that we're not trying to do that at all. We're trying to take the best of every culture and create new culture. But I think, when the city of Zion is built, we're going to retain the best of European culture and Native American culture. Part of the reason why we did go to Hawaii is because that is a sterling example of all these different cultures coming together. At BYU Hawaii, you've got people from Tonga and Tahiti and Kiribati and Samoa and all these other locations. And when they come, they're told to embrace their culture. In fact, the Polynesian Cultural Center is there to preserve and teach people about their cultures. But in bringing them together, we're still creating Zion. We're bringing together the pure in heart. And that's the defining characteristic of the culture of Zion, is just that if there's something in your culture that is keeping you from being pure, that's keeping you away from God, that is something that maybe you should look at getting rid of. But almost everything can stay, especially the things that are positive, that are wonderful, and each culture has its own unique beauty to it. Zion is going to be a multicultural city where the only distinguishing characteristic is that they're pure in heart.
Yeah, and I think my personal idea about this is that we all receive these insights and the good parts of our culture from the same source. And I think we're going to find out that they all connect back together at some point, that all those things that we believe, and it's always those good things, about honoring and being respectful and faithful. Um, the Casey, you mentioned something about the buildings and how you sort of looked at the building a little bit different once you got there, got back to the place that you were at. And I was thinking that reminded me of a time that I was doing cleaning at our ward building, and it was our turn, and so I was there up on the in the choir loft with a vacuum cleaner strapped to my back, cleaning, vacuuming the area up there. And I thought, wow, this is really hard to do. This is really, for an old man with this thing trying to get in between all the folding chairs up there and stuff, was tough. And I thought, you know what, though, this is the Lord's house. And most of the paintings I've seen of him, he looks like he's barefoot. I thought, who am I cleaning this for? I'm cleaning it for him. And I want it as clean as I can get it. If he walks through here and wants to visit his house, I want it to be clean. And so it changed my whole outlook on that. I did it with a grateful heart that I might have an opportunity to make this more available to him, more comfortable for him. And so I think if we have that kind of idea about what these places are, these temples, that we can truly appreciate them more. So I'm going to go ahead and close. Rachel usually asks a final question. I think we actually asked both of you that about the restoration, the gathering, and rather than do that, I'd just like to hear your sort of outlook on these early saints and what their sacrifice means to you. We'll
Santa
start
Rosa.
with Casey.
Oh, start with me. Okay.
Yeah.
The early saints, there's a lot about them to be commended. These sections show that they weren't perfect. The Lord's rebuking them. But I also think it goes to show that we don't always know the big picture of everything we're involved in. Like, I'm guessing the reason why they dragged their feet on the Zion and the Kirtland temples was they just hadn't quite caught the vision. They didn't know that less than 2 centuries later, there'd be 300 temples, there'd be several million members, there'd be people all over the world receiving blessings because of what they did. So I would say, no, there's no small acts in the church, right? Mowing someone's lawn or visiting somebody or going to the temple and putting a name on the roll might seem like a really small, simple thing to do, but out of small things, great things come. So do your part and do it well and do it now is one of the messages from this section, because we're laying the foundation of a great work, greater than we can even imagine.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I just think of all the persecution and trial and moving they had to do. And, as I'm trying to learn more about Utah history and the saints here, I often wonder, how much did all that persecution prepare them to come to Utah and learn how to build a cabin or dig a well or something like that, I think there's probably 100 reasons why uh, the Lord had him move to Missouri and go through all those persecutions and trials. This could be one of them. It really prepared them for the future and what the church was going to become. And like you said, it's earlier line. This is learning line upon line, precept upon precept, and sometimes we might get a piece of revelation, and a year down the road, that revelation might be more fully evolved and developed, but we might just get a piece that might not make sense, and we're trying to get to here and become a better person. But right now, we're only ready to work on this part, and we shouldn't be surprised if later on down the road we get another piece of revelation that's different than this one, or maybe even opposite. The Lord's trying to get us up to here, and it's not always a smooth transition, and sometimes some things don't always make sense. And so I think, the saints were going through that, and ultimately, we have the church today because of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really think that although my ancestors aren't pioneers, I really have a lot of respect for those early saints who sacrificed so much and did so much to build this church and to stay with it, regardless of all the other challenges they had, that they were willing to to make those sacrifices, and sometimes the ultimate sacrifice, in order for this gospel to roll forward. I'm thankful to them for that. So thank you, brethren, for joining our discussion today. Appreciate all your thoughts and insights, um, and spiritual direction you've given us. I really appreciate that. So we invite everyone to join us next week by watching on the Gathering of Tribes YouTube channel or by listening on your favorite audio podcast platform. To learn more about the mission of Gathering Tribes and upcoming events, you can visit our website at www.gatheringoftribes.org. Or if you like this podcast, we would love for you to take a moment to write a review, make comments, ask questions. I would love for people to react to us and interact with us, because I think that's the real benefit of doing this. And so those reviews will help us and help others find our podcast. So thank you for joining us. May your path be peaceful and enlightening this week.